A scream shattered the silence of the evil forest. Birds burst from the trees as an orphan's foot slipped and rough hands shoved her backward. She fell. Dry leaves exploded into the air as her body crashed into a deep hollow hidden beneath tangled roots. Pain shot through her ankle, stealing the breath from her lungs. Above her, 6 faces appeared at the edge of the pit, their shadows swallowing the last light of evening. For a heartbeat, she believed they would help. "Please," she cried, "pull me up." No one moved. Then laughter drifted downward, cold, uneasy, cruel. "Why not call your friend, the beast?" one girl mocked. "Maybe he will come and save you." Confusion crossed the orphan's face. "I only tried to help." Her fingers clawed at the roots, soil crumbling beneath her weight. "Don't leave me here," she begged. One by one, the maidens stepped away. "If that creature truly cares, let him prove it." Their laughter faded into the forest. Silence returned. But the orphan was not alone. Hidden beyond the clearing, golden eyes opened in the shadows. He had seen everything. The betrayal, the fall, the girl who defended him when others raised their weapons. The maidens believed they had abandoned her to the forest. They did not know the forest had already chosen a witness. And as her cries echoed through the darkness, one question lingered. What happens when the only person who showed kindness is betrayed and the creature she saved decides to answer? But to understand why kindness led her into darkness that night, we must return to where the story truly began.
Once upon a time, in the ancient kingdom of Azunaya, elders believed every child entered the world carrying either a blessing or a story the world was not yet ready to hear. On a night when thunder refused to rest and rain struck the earth like restless spirits seeking shelter, a prince was born inside the royal palace. The entire kingdom rejoiced. Drums echoed across the hills. Women danced barefoot in the mud, their laughter rising above the storm. Fires burned through the night as villagers celebrated the long-awaited heir. For many seasons, the king and queen had prayed in silence for a child, and at last, the gods had answered. But joy, like light, often attracts shadows. Beyond the palace gates, 3 figures stood unmoving beneath the rain, their dark wrappers heavy with water. Lightning revealed their faces only for a moment. They were witches. Once, healers among the people, women who understood herbs, dreams, and the quiet language of the unseen world. Years earlier, fear had turned the kingdom against them. Urged on by frightened elders, the king had banished all witches from the land, declaring their gifts dangerous to his rule. Their homes were burned, their names forbidden. Mothers warned children never to speak of them again. But exile does not kill memory, and memory, when wounded, learns to wait. As the newborn prince cried within the palace walls, the witches lifted their hands toward the storm. The first spoke, her voice carried softly by the wind. "You drove us from our home." The second closed her eyes as rain ran down her face. "You chose fear over understanding." The third looked toward the palace window where the child lay wrapped in gold cloth. "Then let your blood learn what it means to be feared." Lightning tore across the sky. Their voices rose together. "He shall walk between worlds, neither fully man nor fully beast, loved by none, accepted nowhere." The storm swallowed their words. Inside the palace, the baby's cry suddenly changed. By morning, the curse revealed itself. Tiny fingers curled into claws, his skin hardened like bark beneath silk blankets. A young maid screamed and dropped the baby's bathwater, fleeing the chamber as whispers spread through the corridors. Only 3 people remained: the king, the queen, and the old servant who had carried the king himself when he was a child. The kingdom was told the prince was ill. But illness fades. The curse did not. As the boy grew, the palace changed around him. Mirrors disappeared from the walls. Toys were left untouched outside his chamber doors. One afternoon, a young servant entered carrying food and froze when the child turned toward her.
The tray slipped from trembling hands, plates shattering across the floor. The boy did not cry. He only watched the servant run away. And nothing wounds a child more deeply than realizing love has learned to be afraid. The queen began visiting at night, when fewer eyes could see her hesitation before embracing her son. The king stood farther away each year, grief hardening into silence. On the night the prince turned 5, the curse surged beyond control. A roar shook the palace halls, furniture splintered, torches fell, scattering sparks across stone floors as guards fled in panic. The queen wept openly, while the king faced a truth no father should ever face. The child could no longer live among humans. Before dawn, beneath heavy silence, the prince was taken beyond the Red River into the evil forest, a place older than memory, where travelers entered, but stories rarely returned. A shelter was built deep within the trees. Food was sent with royal guards. The first guard never returned. Then another, then another. Soon the path into the forest grew untouched, swallowed slowly by vines as whispers spread among the people. The forest was alive, and it protected its own. Years passed beneath the weight of regret, until desperation drove the king to seek a powerful seer whose blindness allowed her to see what sight could not. She listened to the wind for a long time before speaking. "Your son lives." Hope returned like breath after drowning. But before midnight on his 25th birthday, he must receive love freely given, not from fear, not from duty, but true love. Otherwise, the beast will remain forever. From that day forward, time itself became the kingdom's greatest enemy. And as the prince's 25th year drew near, the king summoned the elders and gave an order that would change many destinies, including that of a quiet orphan girl who did not yet know the forest was already waiting for her.
In the outer part of Azunaya, where the houses leaned closer together and smoke from cooking fires curled lazily into the sky, lived a girl whose name was spoken more in sympathy than in celebration. She had lost her mother when she was still small enough to believe sleep could solve sadness. Her father followed seasons later, leaving her in the care of a woman who never truly accepted her presence under the same roof. To the village, she was gentle. To strangers, she was kind. But inside her own home, she moved like a visitor afraid of overstaying her welcome. Before dawn each morning, she swept the compound while others slept. She fetched water from the stream, balanced heavy firewood upon her head, and cooked meals whose aroma filled the air long before she tasted a single bite. Yet, she rarely complained. And kindness, when it survives hardship, shines brighter than beauty. The villagers noticed. Old women blessed her quietly. Children followed her laughter. Even passing traders remembered her greetings long after leaving the village. And without meaning to, she became loved. That was the beginning of the problem. Her stepmother watched these small moments carefully. The smiles, the praise, the way neighbors compared the orphan's humility to her own daughter's pride. Envy does not arrive loudly. It grows slowly, like a crack spreading across clay after the first heat of harmattan. Her daughter, Angela, was beautiful in the way wealth and attention often create beauty. Her wrappers were bright, her jewelry plentiful, her confidence loud enough to fill any gathering. Since childhood, she had been raised with one promise repeated again and again. You were born for greatness. And in her mother's mind, greatness meant only one thing, a crown. So when royal messengers arrived announcing the king's command that maidens from every clan would journey into the forest to search for the lost prince, excitement swept through the village like wildfire. Mothers began preparing their daughters immediately. Hair was braided with care. Wrappers were washed and dyed anew. Fathers spoke proudly of destiny, as though it were something that could be prepared like a feast. Inside the compound, Angela clapped her hands in delight. She said,
This is my moment. The prince will choose me. Her mother smiled, but her eyes drifted toward the orphan standing quietly near the doorway, because even she could see what others saw. Grace cannot be taught, and the orphan carried it effortlessly. Whispers had already begun among villagers. If the prince values kindness, he may choose her. Those words burned deeper than insult. That night, long after the household slept, the stepmother sat alone beside a dying fire, staring into the embers as thoughts hardened into decisions. A shadow cannot stand beside my daughter, she murmured. The next morning, when elders came to select maidens for the sacred journey, she stepped forward before anyone could speak. My stepdaughter is strong, she said sweetly. Let her represent our household. The orphan's head lifted in surprise. For the first time, her stepmother's voice carried warmth. Hope flickered quietly inside her chest. Fragile, cautious hope that perhaps she had finally been accepted. She did not see the brief exchange of glances between the woman and two other maidens standing nearby. She did not notice the small pouch of coins later pressed into waiting hands. Whisper she does not return, the stepmother whispered where no one watched. Preparations began at once. On the morning of departure, the chosen girls gathered at the sacred shrine at the edge of the village. The chief priest moved among them slowly, rubbing white powder markings across their foreheads and shoulders. From this moment, your voices belong to silence. Speak no word until you reach the forest. Some spirits listen for fear carried in human sound. Palm fronds were placed between their lips. Drums beat slowly as villagers gathered to watch. Mothers wiped tears. Children waved eagerly. Elders lifted prayers into the morning air. The orphan stood among the maidens, equal at last, her heart filled with a strange mixture of fear and wonder. She believed she was beginning a journey toward destiny. She did not know she was walking toward betrayal already planned. The procession moved forward in silence, their footsteps soft against the narrow path as Azunaya disappeared behind them. At first, the journey felt almost ordinary. Birds sang overhead, sunlight filtered gently through tall trees, dry leaves cracked beneath careful feet. The maidens walked in single file, palm fronds held between their lips as instructed, their white markings glowing faintly against their skin. No one spoke. Yet thoughts grew loud inside each mind. Some imagined returning as queen. Some feared they would never return at all. The orphan walked near the back, her eyes wandering quietly over the forest. She noticed how the air felt different there, heavier, as though every breath passed through unseen memories. Hours passed. The trees thickened. Sunlight faded into long shadows, even though the day was still young. And slowly, the sounds of birds disappeared. One of the girls glanced around nervously. Another tightened her grip on the small charm tied around her wrist. Still, they continued, until exhaustion broke discipline. A maiden near the front suddenly pulled the palm frond from her mouth, wiping sweat from her forehead. I cannot walk another step, she complained aloud. This journey is cursed. The words had barely left her lips when the wind stopped completely. Leaves froze mid-rustle. The forest held its breath. Then the air twisted. A violent whirlwind rose from nowhere, spinning dust and leaves into the sky. The girl stumbled backward as the wind circled the speaking maiden. Her eyes widened. She screamed. In a single terrifying moment, the whirlwind lifted her from the ground and swallowed her into its spinning heart. And then it vanished. The path stood empty. Only scattered leaves remained where she had stood. The remaining maidens stared in frozen disbelief. Fear spread among them like cold water. One girl began to cry silently, tears slipping down her cheeks around the palm frond still held between her lips. Another grabbed the orphan's arm tightly, trembling. Without needing words, they began to walk faster.
The forest no longer felt like a place. It felt like something alive. The path twisted deeper until they reached a clearing where a small house stood alone between crooked trees. Smoke curled gently from its roof, rising peacefully into the air as though nothing dangerous existed in miles. Relief washed over several faces. A place meant people, and people meant safety. Two maidens exchanged hopeful glances and hurried toward the door, despite warning looks from the others. They knocked once. The door opened slowly on its own. Warm light spilled outward. Without hesitation, they stepped inside. The door closed behind them. The remaining girls waited. Moments passed, then minutes. No voices came from inside, no footsteps, only silence. One girl moved closer, reaching cautiously toward the door, but before her fingers touched it, the house flickered. Like a reflection disturbed by water. And slowly, it faded away. Walls dissolved into air. Roof vanished into mist, until nothing remained but empty ground. The girls stumbled backward in horror. The forest had taken two more. Now fear took over them completely. They ran. Branches scratched their arms, roots caught their feet. Breath came in sharp bursts as panic pushed them forward without direction. By the time they stopped, only 9 remained. Exhaustion settled heavily upon them. Hunger gnawed at their strength. They collapsed beneath a wide tree whose branches stretched like protective arms overhead. That was when he appeared. A man dressed in palace guard clothing stepped calmly from between the trees, carrying a basket. Relief flooded the group instantly. "The king sent me," he said gently. "Food for your journey." His voice sounded normal, too normal. He placed the basket before them and stepped back politely. Inside were fruits and roasted meat, fresh and inviting. The orphan hesitated. Something felt wrong, not dangerous, but empty, like a smile without warmth. She shook her head slightly, trying to warn the others with her eyes. But hunger is louder than caution. 2 maidens grabbed the food eagerly and began to eat. They laughed with relief. Strength returned to their faces. Then their laughter stopped. Their bodies shimmered faintly, like heat rising from stone. And before anyone could react, they disappeared. The basket fell to the ground untouched. The strange guard was gone. The clearing stood empty once more. Now, only 7 maidens remained. No one needed instructions anymore. The forest was testing them. And somewhere ahead, unseen beyond tangled trees, destiny waited patiently for the moment when fear would turn into cruelty, and cruelty would change everything.
Now, only 7 maidens remained. They walked closer together than before, fear stitching them into a single uneasy group. No one dared remove the palm frond from her mouth again. Even their breathing felt cautious, as though the forest itself might punish sound. The air grew colder. Mist curled low along the ground, wrapping around their ankles like wandering spirits. Above them, branches twisted together so tightly that daylight struggled to reach the earth. Somewhere in the distance, something moved. A low sound followed, not loud, not threatening, just present. A growl rolled softly through the trees. The girls froze. Slowly, they turned. At the edge of the clearing stood the creature. He was enormous, taller than any man, his body covered in dark fur streaked with old scars. Golden eyes shone beneath heavy brows, watching them with cautious stillness rather than hunger. He did not charge. He did not roar again. He simply stood there, as though unsure whether to approach or retreat. Fear, however, rarely waits for understanding. One maiden screamed behind her palm frond, the sound muffled but sharp enough to shatter the fragile calm. Another grabbed a fallen branch.
Then panic spread faster than reason. They attacked. Stones flew first. Branches struck his shoulders. One girl thrust a sharpened stick toward him with shaking hands. The beast staggered backward, raising his arms to shield himself. A wounded sound escaped his throat, not anger, but confusion. The orphan stepped forward desperately, waving her hands. "No!" she tried to shout, her voice muffled by the palm frond. She pulled it from her mouth. "Stop! He isn't attacking us!" But fear had already become cruelty. Blow after blow landed until the beast collapsed heavily onto the ground. Dust rose around him. He lay motionless. Silence fell. The maidens stared, chests heaving, waiting for movement that never came. One whispered, half relieved, half horrified. Another pointed accusingly at the orphan. "You defended it." All eyes turned toward her. Suspicion replaced fear. "You spoke to it," a girl said slowly. "You wanted to protect a monster." The orphan shook her head. He was hurt. He wasn't trying to harm us. But reason cannot survive where fear seeks someone to blame. The two girls, secretly paid by her stepmother, exchanged a glance. Now was their moment. She slowed us down from the beginning. First, the whirlwind came, then the house, then the disappearances. The other nodded quickly. Bad luck follows her. Doubt spread through the group like smoke. The orphan looked from face to face, searching for kindness and finding none. At last, one girl spoke the words that sealed her fate. "If she loves the beast so much, let the beast protect her." They walked deeper into the forest until they reached a wide hollow hidden beneath tangled roots, a dark opening in the earth, barely visible beneath fallen leaves. Before the orphan understood their intention, hands grabbed her arms. "What are you doing?" she cried. No one answered. They pushed. She stumbled backward, losing balance as the ground vanished beneath her feet. Her scream followed her downward. The sound echoed through the forest. Above, 6 faces appeared briefly at the edge of the hole. Laughter followed, uneasy, forced, hiding fear behind cruelty. "Call your beast," one mocked. "Let him save you." And then they were gone. Silence returned. The beast rose slowly from the forest floor. Pain tore through his body with every movement, yet something stronger pulled him forward. Not anger, not revenge, recognition. In all the years the forest had imprisoned him, no human had ever touched him with kindness, except her. And now her voice drifted faintly through the trees, weak, frightened, calling for help. Darkness settled slowly around the orphan. At first, she did not move. Pain throbbed through her ankle where she had landed, sharp enough to steal her breath each time she tried to stand. Above her, the opening of the hollow looked impossibly far away, a broken circle of fading light tangled in roots and hanging vines. "Help!" she called weakly. Her voice climbed upward and vanished. No answer came back, only the distant whisper of wind moving through leaves. She tried to climb. Her fingers gripped exposed roots, pulling herself upward inch by inch, but the soil crumbled beneath her weight. Loose earth rained down, dragging her back to the ground. Dust filled her lungs. This time, she did not try again. Fear arrived quietly. Not panic, realization. They were not coming back. The forest grew still as evening approached. Shadows stretched along the walls of the hollow until darkness wrapped fully around her. Hunger followed, then thirst, and with them came memories she had buried deep. Her mother's laughter, warm evenings beside the fire, a home that no longer existed. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not for the pain, not even for the betrayal, but for the loneliness that seemed to find her everywhere she went. She hugged her knees tightly and listened to her own breathing. For a long time, There was nothing else. Then, softly, she began to sing, a small song her mother once hummed while washing clothes by the river, a melody meant to comfort restless hearts. Her voice trembled at first, fragile against the vast silence, but slowly it steadied. The song rose into the night air, carried between trees, through roots, across unseen paths. Far away, the beast lifted his head. He had been moving slowly through the forest, each step heavy with pain from the attack. Blood darkened his fur, every breath burned his chest. Then he heard it. A human voice, soft, familiar, kind. He froze. The song reached him again, fragile, hopeful, alive. Recognition stirred deep within him. He turned toward the sound. Branches snapped beneath his weight as he moved faster, ignoring the pain tearing through his body. The forest seemed to open before him, guiding him toward the voice that had once touched him without fear. Back in the hollow, the orphan's singing weakened. Her throat had grown dry. Sleep pulled at her eyes, heavy, dangerous. She leaned against the wall, her voice fading into a whisper. Above her, leaves rustled. She barely noticed. Then soil loosened, roots trembled. A shadow crossed the opening. She froze. Heavy breathing echoed downward. The earth suddenly shifted as powerful claws tore into the sides of the hollow, ripping away soil and roots. Moonlight flooded inside as the opening widened. The orphan shielded her eyes. And then she saw him. The beast! Fear returned instantly. "This is how I die," she whispered. But no teeth came, no fury, only gentle arms reaching down. Carefully, slowly, he lifted her as though she was something fragile, something precious, something worth saving. Warmth surrounded her as he carried her out of the hollow and into the cool night air. The forest smelled different above ground, alive with damp earth and distant flowers. The beast set her down gently beside a fallen tree and stepped back at once, watching her cautiously, as though afraid she might fear him now. She stared at him, still trying to understand. "You came back?" she whispered. The beast lowered his gaze. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The night breathed quietly around them. Then he turned and disappeared into the trees. Panic flickered across her face, but before it could grow, he returned, carrying broad leaves folded carefully into a bowl filled with water. He knelt, slowly, offering it to her with both hands. She hesitated. His golden eyes held no hunger, no anger, only concern. Carefully, she accepted the leaves and drank. Cool relief spread through her body, loosening the tightness in her chest. She exhaled softly. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. The beast said nothing. He simply moved a short distance away and sat, alert, watching the forest instead of her, guarding her from dangers she could not see. Above them, the moon rose silently between the branches. And for the first time since entering the forest, the orphan did not feel alone. Unseen by both of them, the ancient trees swayed gently, as though the forest itself approved of what had begun. Because destiny does not always arrive with trumpets or crowns. Sometimes it begins with kindness shared between two wounded souls beneath a quiet sky. Morning arrived gently. Soft sunlight filtered through the trees, painting the ground in shifting gold and shadow. Birds returned cautiously, their songs uncertain, as if asking permission to sing again. The orphan stared awake beside a small fire she did not remember lighting. Across from her, the beast sat exactly where she had last seen him. He had not slept.
She could tell by the stillness in his posture, by the way his golden eyes followed every small movement she made, watching, protecting. For a moment, fear returned, a reminder of what he was. But the feeling faded quickly, because monsters did not gather fruits and place them carefully within reach. Monsters did not keep watch through the night. "You stayed," she said softly. The beast tilted his head, uncertain how to respond. When she tried to stand, pain shot through her ankle. Before she could fall, he moved instantly, steadying her with careful hands, gentle, hesitant, as though his strength might hurt her. "Thank you," she whispered. Something shifted in him. His shoulders tightened. He looked away toward the trees. Days passed without counting. He showed her where clear water slipped between smooth rocks. He brought unfamiliar fruits and fish from hidden streams. When storms came, he guided her into a cave hidden behind falling water, where rain sounded distant and harmless. They spoke little, yet the silence between them never felt empty. At first, she asked many questions. "Why can you understand me? Have you always lived here? Are there others like you?" Each time, he only looked into the distance, as though words belonged to another life he could barely remember. Slowly, trust grew. She laughed again, quietly at first, then freely. She braided flowers into her hair and spoke about her childhood, her mother, and a loneliness that felt heavier than hunger. He listened, always listened, and for the first time in years, neither of them felt like strangers to the world.
One evening, as sunset painted the sky deep orange, she noticed something new. He was trembling, not from fear, from struggle. His breathing grew uneven, his claws digging into the earth as though resisting something inside himself. "Are you hurt?" she asked, stepping closer. He backed away quickly, shaking his head. A low growl escaped him, not directed at her, but at whatever battled within him. That night he did not come near the fire. He remained at the edge of the clearing, restless, pacing beneath the moon until dawn. And the next night was worse. Branches snapped as he moved through the forest in agitation. Birds fled, small animals scattered. Even the air felt tense, as though the forest itself sensed approaching change. The orphan watched quietly. Worry settled deep inside her chest. "You are hiding something," she said gently the following evening. He froze. For the first time since she had known him, he spoke clearly. "You must leave." His voice was rough, unused, shaped by years of silence. Her eyes widened. "You can talk." He turned away. "Danger, coming." "I'm not afraid of you," she said softly. But he shook his head violently. "You should be." The words lingered between them. As days passed, the forest itself seemed restless. Winds changed direction without warning. Nights grew colder. Even the moon appeared sharper, watching from above like a silent witness counting down unseen moments. On the eve of his 25th birthday, the change came. It began with a roar that shook leaves from the trees. The beast collapsed to his knees, claws digging deep into the earth as pain tore through him. His body trembled uncontrollably, muscles tightening and releasing as though two forms fought for control. "Go!" he shouted, voice breaking between human and beast. "Leave before I hurt you." She hesitated, tears filling her eyes. "I won't abandon you." "Go!" he roared again, louder this time, forcing her backward. Fear finally pushed her into the trees. Hidden behind thick roots, she watched helplessly as he thrashed through the clearing, destroying branches and stones alike, battling a curse she could not understand. Then suddenly, silence. The forest stilled. Slowly, she stepped forward. The beast lay motionless on the ground. Moonlight rested upon him gently. "No," she whispered, rushing to his side. She knelt beside him, shaking his shoulder. No response. His breathing was faint, almost gone. Tears blurred her vision. All the loneliness she had carried, all the kindness he had shown, all the quiet moments they had shared rose within her at once. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You stayed when everyone else left." Her tears fell onto his fur. Thinking life was slipping away from him, she leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss against his forehead, not out of hope for magic, not for reward, but out of gratitude, out of love she did not yet understand. The forest inhaled. Light burst outward, warm, blinding, alive. The ground trembled as fur receded, claws withdrew, and the shape before her changed beneath the glow of moonlight. She stumbled back, shielding her eyes. When the light faded, a man lay where the beast had been. Tall, scarred, breathing deeply for the first time as though waking from a long dream. Slowly, his eyes opened, and when they met hers, recognition filled them, gentle, human, and full of wonder. "Kemi," he said softly. Her name. He knew her name, and in that moment, the curse that had ruled 2 lives finally broke. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The orphan stared, her breath unsteady, as the stranger slowly sat upright. Moonlight rested upon his face, revealing eyes she already knew, the same golden eyes that had watched her with quiet patience beside countless fires. Only now, they were human. "You," she whispered, unable to finish the thought. He looked at his hands as though seeing them for the first time. Fingers, no claws. Skin, no fur. Wonder and disbelief crossed his face before his gaze returned to her. "The curse," he said softly, his voice clearer now. "It is gone." Understanding dawned slowly between them, like sunrise. "You were," her voice trembled, "the beast." He nodded. "And you," he added gently, "are the reason I am free." The forest seemed to sigh around them, leaves rustling softly as if releasing a secret long kept. Morning found them walking side by side along a path that felt strangely familiar to him, though he had not walked it in human form since childhood. Birds followed overhead, singing louder than before, and sunlight reached places once hidden by shadow. The forest no longer felt like a prison. It felt like farewell. Days later, the gates of Azunaya appeared in the distance. Farmers were the first to see them. At first, they stared only at the young man dressed in simple forest cloth, walking with the orphan everyone believed dead. Then, recognition spread slowly, like ripples across water. Messengers ran ahead shouting, The prince has returned!" The palace erupted into confusion and disbelief. Guards rushed forward, stopping abruptly as the young man approached with calm certainty. Inside the courtyard, the king stepped forward slowly, fear and hope battling in his eyes. For years, he had imagined this moment only in dreams. "My son," he whispered. The prince knelt. "Father." The king's staff slipped from his hand as emotion overcame him. He pulled his son into a tight embrace, tears falling freely, not as a ruler, but as a father who had mourned a child still living.
The queen wept openly, holding both of them as though afraid they might disappear again. Only after the joy settled did the king notice the maiden standing quietly beside them. "The maiden," he said gently, "we were told you died in the forest." She lowered her head respectfully. "The forest did not kill me, Your Majesty," she said softly. "It revealed the true enemies of the kingdom." And before the people, she told everything: the journey, the disappearances, the wounded beast, the kindness shared, and finally, the betrayal. Whispers spread among the people as the remaining maidens were summoned. They entered confidently at first, expecting praise as before, but their smiles faded when they saw the orphan standing alive beside the prince. Fear replaced pride. The prince's voice remained calm, yet carried undeniable authority. "You were sent to find me. Instead, you chose wickedness. No one denied it." The king's face hardened. "In Azunaya," he declared, "betrayal of the innocent carries a heavy price." The maidens who abandoned her, along with the stepmother whose jealousy began it all, were banished beyond the Red River, stripped of honor and name. In the weeks that followed, the kingdom prepared for a celebration greater than any before. Drums echoed once more across the land, but this time they carried not hope, but certainty. On the day of the wedding, the village gathered beneath bright banners and colorful decorations. Elders blessed the union. Children sang. Women danced joyfully as the prince placed a crown gently upon the orphan's head. The girl once sent away as unwanted now stood before the people as queen. Not chosen for beauty, not chosen for ambition, but chosen because she showed kindness when no reward was promised. As the celebrations continued, the prince leaned toward her and whispered softly, "In the forest, you saw a monster and still chose compassion." She smiled gently. "In the forest," she replied, "I saw someone who needed kindness." And so, peace returned to Azunaya. Years later, elders would tell this story beside evening fires, reminding young hearts of a truth older than kingdoms themselves. Sometimes, the world sends you into dark places believing you will disappear. And sometimes, the one abandoned in darkness becomes the light that changes everything. Because destiny does not always arrive wearing a crown. Sometimes, it waits quietly until kindness sets it free.